This burial chamber beneath Saqqara was never meant to be seen again. Deep between the cliffs, archaeologists recently uncovered a hidden entrance carved straight into the rock. And as crews set up cameras and excavation equipment, they slowly descended into a sealed corridor that had likely remained untouched for thousands of years. At the end of the narrow passage, the team reached a small chamber where something enormous lay buried in the dust. A massive stone coffin, far larger than a normal sarcophagus, carved from a single block of rock and covered with ancient markings. As cameras rolled and researchers carefully examined it, the discovery already felt strange, but the real nightmare began outside. Roughly 3.5 kilometers away, a lion far larger than any normal lion was walking straight toward them through the haze. Cameramen kept filming as it moved closer, its size becoming more terrifying with every step. One man, backing away near the cliff edge, panicked and slipped, falling down the rocky slope while the others ran, trying to gain distance and capture clearer footage. They managed to snap a few more shots as the creature climbed the ridge, but what stunned everyone was how fast it moved. Have you noticed how rapidly the atmosphere has started to shift throughout the United States? The sky over large cities became crimson in a matter of days. Under a spooky green horizon, tornadoes tore across the plains. In Colorado, strange lights appeared, while in California, the ground shook as though something was changing beneath the surface. Millions watched in bewilderment as one disruption after another emerged. These are no longer merely catastrophes for a lot of individuals. They seem like cautions. A subject that few people previously dared to explore is being raised by an increasing number of voices across the nation. Are these instances more than just coincidences? Could they serve as a reminder that the world is facing a shift we are not prepared for, and that we are starting to pay the price for ignoring the signals of our planet? Stay with me because what we are going to reveal could alter your perspective on these occurrences. Before we proceed, please take a moment to reflect in the comments section, sharing your thoughts on how we can find strength and resilience in these uncertain times. The instability started on what should have been a typical morning in San Francisco, California, during these unsettling times. People anticipated sunlight as they woke up. Rather, many of them froze in place when they went outside. It was a dark crimson sky over the city, not the soft hue of dawn, not the waning radiance of dusk. This was a dense, oppressive scarlet sky that was pushing down over the horizon. It sounded as though the heavens had been stained overnight. There was no sun. At that hour, it was normally brilliant and blinding, but beneath a thick cloud of smoke and haze, there was merely a dreary shadow. Daylight seemed faint, dull, and strange. The city as a whole seemed bizarre, as if the world had shifted into another hour of time, as streets, buildings, and roads were bathed in an odd blood-colored glow. On the roadways, drivers slowed. Some pulled their vehicles to the side and went outdoors while gazing aloft. Others lifted their phones and took pictures of the sky as it turned from orange to a deeper scarlet, resembling blazing embers that stretched over the heavens. Videos went viral on social media in a matter of hours. Where daylight should have been, entire towns are under a crimson sky. A logical explanation was provided by meteorologists. High in the atmosphere, wildfire smoke can scatter sunlight, removing blue wavelengths and making the sky dominated by deeper red tones. It made sense from a scientific standpoint. However, many people sensed something much heavier than science could explain as they stood beneath that sky. The clouds above appeared more like a warning painted across the sky than like actual weather. A few witnesses started posing an almost taboo inquiry. Is this an indication of a global shift? Are the skies themselves starting to talk because the balance of nature has been so deeply disturbed? Experts have often discussed how the environment reacts before a massive geological or atmospheric transition. Some say that before great changes occur, the atmosphere itself will transform into shades of fire and smoke. These observations were noted in historical records of natural anomalies centuries ago. However, many people were unable to ignore the gravity of that warning on that morning, under a sky that appeared to have been soaked in blood. Because some people start to question whether the sky is simply changing, or whether it is calling on humanity to wake up and face the reality of our changing world when the sun sets, and the sky becomes red over a restless globe. The atmosphere in Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, and the central United States started to get restless once more just a few days after the crimson sky subsided. We are witnessing a sequence of events that challenges our understanding of nature. And as the ground continues to tremble and the winds pick up speed, the question remains whether we are watching a temporary fluke or a permanent rewriting of the American landscape as we know it. Every tremor and every storm adds a new chapter to this unfolding mystery. And it is time we start looking at the bigger picture before the next signal appears on the horizon. On their radar displays, meteorologists in the bustling corridors of Oklahoma City noticed the first indications of something far beyond a standard weather pattern as the warm air from the Gulf rushed north, while the chilling air from the Arctic pushed down, creating a collision of two enormous natural forces right above the heart of America. The sky grew gloomy as the clouds continued to rise, piling on top of one another like tall walls, and the air became heavy and oppressive, as though the ground itself was preparing for something invisible. Then something occurred that many witnesses claim they will never forget. Abruptly, the wind ceased, the trees remained still, and birds disappeared from the heavens as even the far-off hum of traffic in downtown Kansas City appeared to diminish, leaving the ground holding its breath as the planet descended into an eerie quiet. This silence was not peaceful. It was a heavy, structural stillness that suggested the very atmosphere was being rewritten by forces we have yet to map. Then it arrived as the sky was filled with a lengthy, metallic boom that was neither wind nor thunder, but a deep, hollow sound that reverberated across the sky like a massive industrial echo. People left their houses in rural Nebraska and looked up at the blank sky, some using their phones to record the sound while others just stood motionless, listening to the odd resonance as it traveled over the plains like a siren from another dimension. Shortly after, the storm's actual strength became apparent as the first tornado arrived in a matter of minutes. A massive funnel cloud descending from the sky and slamming violently against the ground with a sound like a freight train ripping across the landscape. Roofs disappeared, power wires broke, and entire neighborhoods in the outskirts of Des Moines disappeared behind spinning walls of debris as multiple tornadoes carved paths across hundreds of miles of farmland and towns. To the scientific community, this was a violent anomaly of pressure and heat. But to those who heard that metallic echo through the sky just moments before the destruction began, the sound carried a deeper weight, feeling more like a systemic warning from the planet itself rather than a simple weather event. History has often recorded these moments where the environment seems to develop a voice of its own, signaling a shift in the geological era we inhabit. And as the heavens roared and the winds whirled, a disturbing thought started to circulate among those who saw it. Another sign emerged in the skies over the high peaks of Wyoming when the sky itself started to sound like a haunting frequency heralding the storm far to the west. And in Yellowstone National Park, everything started out gently as a lone hiker looked up and saw something that did not belong to the ordinary sky. Streams of light, not falling like meteors and not blinking like aircraft, moved with intention as thin ribbons of glowing energy slid across the heavens, bending and curving as if guided by an unseen hand. They left long luminous trails suspended in the sky like scars drawn across the firmament itself, while witnesses heard nothing but silent streaks racing across the vast darkening sky. These weren't just random flashes. They were coordinated movements that suggested a level of atmospheric energy we are only beginning to understand. A phenomenon that suggests our upper atmosphere is becoming a conductor for forces previously unseen. Videos went viral online in a matter of minutes as people watched in disbelief as the lights twisted and shifted direction, moving in ways that seemed to defy the simple logic of falling objects. A well-known explanation was proposed by scientists regarding the exhaust plume of a satellite launch illuminated by sunlight at high altitude. And while the justification seemed plausible, a lot of observers found the light's movement to be disconcerting since it was too planned and controlled. And at the same time, across parts of the country already shaken by storms, earthquakes, and strange skies, a profound shift in the American psyche began happening as people began to gather in town squares and community centers, their voices rising quietly into the night. A few requested protection, while others pleaded for a return to stability, many questioning whether the sequential appearance of these signals was a warning that our modern civilization has moved too far away from the natural laws that govern this world. Scholars have long noted that the environment itself acts as a mirror to the state of the world, reflecting the chaos of the times through the sun, moon, and stars, and that when the heavenly powers seem to shake, it is a call for humanity to pay closer attention to the ground beneath their feet. Many folks experienced the same unsettling thought as they stood under those shifting lights, wondering if the sky itself starts sending signs. Are we witnessing simple phenomena or warnings that we can no longer ignore? While weird lights had disturbed the sky over the Rockies and storms continued to rage over the plains, something much more unsettling occurred on the opposite side of the nation, as the morning had begun as usual in the sleepy coastal towns of Oregon. People were getting ready for work, and kids were preparing for school with no hint in the air that the ground underneath them was going to turn against them. But then all of a sudden, it started. Initially, it was just a slight quake, a quiet vibration that moved stealthily beneath the streets. However, the shaking intensified in a matter of seconds as windows rattled angrily and cabinets flew open. Entire buildings began swaying as if pushed by an invisible force, and people ran outside in panic as the ground continued to convulse beneath their feet in the suburbs of Portland. In driveways, cars bounced back and forth, street lights swung wildly, and dust from older buildings drifted down, causing fissures to form across pavement surfaces in many places. Emergency alerts erupted on phones across the Pacific Northwest, citing unprecedented seismic activity that refused to remain still for several horrifying moments. Locals gazed in disbelief after spending days witnessing storms and weird skies, realizing something even more terrifying. The ground itself had now become a part of the mayhem. The tremor was ultimately explained by scientists as a sudden release of pressure along the Cascadia subduction zone, where the North American plate is being mercilessly grinded by the oceanic plates. But the timing was unsettling to many who felt the ground tremble beneath them. Old accounts of natural history tell us that there are seasons where both the heavens and the earth begin to move in tandem. And as people stood outside their homes that morning, they couldn't shake the feeling that we are entering a moment where the silence of nature has ended. What sort of moment is humanity entering if the sky is already howling and the ground itself is starting to tremble? The storm system would not go away even as nature unleashed another power, water, farther east across portions of Arkansas and Louisiana. The clouds were predicted to pass by meteorologists, but the sky remained still this time, and it persisted. Huge storm clouds loomed over whole areas like a massive ceiling that would not budge. The rain kept falling hour after hour, and instead of a life-giving resource, the water became a relentless weight, pounding the earth with unrelenting torrents that felt calculated in their intensity. The streets appeared damp at first, then the water started to collect as systems for drainage overflowed, turning every road into a river and every basement into a reservoir. This wasn't just a flood. It was an atmospheric blockade, a standing wave of moisture that refused to obey the laws of typical weather movement, forcing thousands to flee as the boundaries between land and water began to dissolve. As we look at these events spanning from the red skies of the West to the flooded plains of the South, it becomes clear that the American landscape is undergoing a transformation that defies our existing maps and models, leaving us to wait and watch for what the next horizon will bring. Roads across the heart of the American Midwest were quickly overflowed by overflowing gutters as tiny streams grew into furious currents. And shortly after, whole streets started to vanish under the rising water in a display of nature's raw, unchecked power. At major intersections throughout metropolitan St. Louis, cars came to a stop, and as the flood poured around them, drivers were forced to scale rooftops to escape the mounting surge. Water poured through broken windows and front doors in a number of residential areas, filling houses in a matter of minutes and leaving families with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Emergency personnel in Missouri and Illinois hurried to react as boats navigated suburban streets that had been congested with commuter traffic just hours before. Rescue workers evacuated families from flooded houses while helicopters hovered over rooftops. And from the air, the devastation appeared unreal as dark, silt-heavy water engulfed entire districts, effectively deleting streets from the map and turning once thriving communities into expansive, murky lakes. This sudden conversion of solid ground into an aquatic wasteland serves as a visceral reminder of how fragile our human infrastructure truly is when the environmental balance shifts. However, many people found deeper significance in witnessing these events. The sequence of storms, weird skies, earthquakes, and the flood occurring one after the other. Because water itself has historically been viewed as a tool of ultimate transition and systemic correction. When we examine the structural integrity of a society, we see that a foundation built on superficiality and systemic deceit cannot withstand the pressure of a shifting world. And when the storms arrive, they inevitably expose what was never truly powerful in the first place. Some observers were unable to overlook the eerie symbolism as they stood on rooftops and watched the water engulf the streets below, realizing that floods do not ask for permission, and that as the water starts to rise higher than anyone anticipated, we are forced to confront the reality that no nation, city, or human system is genuinely secure without a deeper connection to the laws of balance and truth. The water of Lake Mead has been slowly receding at the enormous Hoover Dam wall between Nevada and Arizona, year after year, like a tide that no longer plans to return, and something unsettling has come to light as the water retreats. A huge white scar encircles the lake high along the canyon walls, where a mineral ring is left behind as the water line drops, appearing almost strange from above, as it spans miles over the cliffs like a line carved by an invisible hand. The pale band can reach heights greater than a 10-story structure in some areas, and while locals refer to it as the bathtub ring, some murmur a darker moniker, the threshold of depletion. Because each year the water recedes farther, revealing more of that silent imprint across the stone as though the earth itself were documenting a massive loss of vitality. The lake fell to its lowest level since the construction of Hoover Dam in the 1930s recently, and strange objects surfaced from the depths as the flood subsided elsewhere, including long-forgotten abandoned boats and rusted material that disclosed grim secrets from the past. The vanishing of this lifeline is not just a geological event. It is a silent narrative of a land that is losing its lifeblood as the connection between the people and the source of their sustenance begins to fray. Ancient records often describe a territory losing its waters when its inhabitants turn away from the principles of life. And as the riverbed becomes arid and empty, the country's wells inevitably run dry. Some visitors describe the pale ring etched into the rock as feeling like a boundary line created by a higher authority, a dreadful message whispered in the desert wind that blessings can indeed vanish if they are taken for granted or forgotten. Another disturbing finding emerged deep beneath the Arizona desert near the Grand Canyon as storms tore across the plains. Inside a system of isolated caverns etched from the red desert rock, a team of experts discovered something ancient that had been hidden for a far longer period of time than contemporary history can readily account for. Weapons, not contemporary instruments and not artifacts from the last few centuries, were found, including hunting spears and stone blades thought to be around 7,000 years old. These long, thin blades with crude accuracy etched into them were made for both survival and warfare in a civilization that existed long before towns and freeways blanketed the globe. It initially appeared to be just another archaeological find, but an odd event then occurred as researchers discovered something strange after carefully removing a few of the weapons. They were warm to the touch, emitting a slight residual heat as if the energy of the era they were forged in was suddenly reanimating. This thermal anomaly beneath the desert suggests that the very layers of the earth are shifting, and many observers find the timing worrisome as unusual events. Storms, trembling ground, and silent lights continue to grip the nation. The reappearance of these ancient symbols of conflict is seen by many as a sign that the repercussions of history are finally materializing in the present day. According to historical patterns of systemic collapse, the sharpening and polishing of old symbols often precedes a period of great reckoning, where the sword represents the moment when long-awaited consequences finally arrive. Some researchers acknowledged experiencing a peculiar feeling that history itself was still awake, while standing in that silent cave with weaponry older than entire civilizations. One unanswered question lingered as the desert wind swept across the Arizona plateau above the cave. What kind of moment is the world nearing if the tools of ancient survival and judgment are beginning to stir deep underground just as the skies above turn to fire? We are witnessing a convergence of the ancient and the modern, a time where the earth is speaking through its scars and its depths, forcing us to ask if we are ready for the transformation that has already begun to unfold across the American landscape. Another disturbance surfaced well below the calm waters of Lake Powell in the canyons of Utah. As the storms continued to tear across the plains and the deserts of Arizona showed antiquated armaments, signaling a shift that seemed to move from the very core of the earth. The lake looked serene at first, and beneath the high desert sky, the enormous reservoir that spans the border between Utah and Arizona was still, reflecting the same quiet surface that millions of tourists had viewed for decades. Then there was movement beneath the sea, and witnesses on the shore abruptly saw an odd surge sweeping across the lake's surface. Unlike a typical wind-driven wave, the water did not rise but rather pushed outward, as though the water had been raised from underneath by an invisible force beneath the lake bed. The surface shook, and rapidly spreading like a silent shock wave through the water, ripples covered the entire lake as it appeared to some witnesses that the lake had suddenly inhaled, pressing up on the Earth's surface with an internal pressure that defied logic. This subsurface heave suggests a massive displacement of geological energy, a moment where the deep reservoirs of the American West are reacting to the same tectonic and atmospheric pressures we have seen unfolding across the country. Several witnesses reported hearing a deep rumbling sound reverberating throughout the canyon walls just prior to the surge. Not the sound of engines or boats and not thunder, but a deep, far-off vibration that sounded like a hollow horn, as if the desert itself were issuing a warning. Later, tiny seismic movements beneath the lake bed were picked up by monitoring stations. And while researchers hypothesized that the sediments beneath the river may have been disturbed by slight tectonic movement beneath the Colorado Plateau, the moment felt more weighty than a straightforward geological explanation to those who stood along the cliffs that day. Because the indications were already spreading throughout the nation, the ground was shaking beneath towns, There were storms, odd noises in the sky, and now the deep itself was moving, echoing ancient descriptions of how the presence of profound power caused the seas to rise and the mountains to shudder. In many historical accounts, the deep raising its hands and speaking louder has been seen as a witness to events far bigger than human influence, a reaction that occurs when the structural foundations of our world begin to shift. Some observers could not get rid of the same disturbing thought as they stood above Lake Powell's turbulent waves, wondering what force might be emerging beneath the surface of our world if even the deep waters beneath the earth start to stir. A strange metallic echo drifted over the sky, causing people to abruptly stop what they were doing across the vast prairies of Oklahoma and Kansas, sounding like a huge trumpet being blown someplace above the clouds. It was deep, hollow, and frighteningly powerful. Witnesses went outside their houses and looked up into the sky for thunderheads or airplanes, but there was an odd emptiness in the heavens above them, yet the sound persisted, moving and shifting as the call seemed to be carried by the atmosphere itself from horizon to horizon. These acoustic anomalies, which some compared to the sound of a faraway trumpet, felt like the sky itself was issuing a formal alert, and soon videos of the unsettling resonance reverberating through the open air became viral on social media. In certain recordings, the metallic tones rolled across the plains while faint flashes of light flickered in the skies, prompting researchers to look for answers such as unusual atmospheric pressure waves or far-off acoustic disruptions passing through layers of air. However, the explanation seemed insufficient to those who heard it because there was a deeper quality to the sound itself, an old, ceremonial tone that felt more like a call to action than a weather event. Historically, such sounds in the sky have declared the entrance of significant shifts, warnings, or occasions of immense societal weight, similar to the ancient descriptions of thunder and trumpet blasts filling the sky during moments of great change. Many folks were unable to escape a single uncomfortable notion as they stood beneath the odd echoes that drifted across the American prairies that day. Could the environment be attempting to attract our attention when the sky itself starts to sound like a trumpet? Something strange has been happening all around the United States in recent weeks. Not a single incident or an isolated catastrophe, but a string of peculiar happenings that emerged in a very short period of time. First, there seemed to be a shift in the symphony of the skies themselves, where in a number of areas the horizon glowed as though the sun were streaming through smoke and flames, and daylight turned an eerie crimson. Soon after, the plains saw catastrophic tornado storms that tore through tiny towns and farmland like dark funnels, while silent light streaks could be observed rushing across the skies over Colorado and the Rockies, leaving people wondering what they were witnessing as the glowing lines curved and changed direction. The Earth then started to move as another earthquake rocked Northern California and the Pacific Northwest, causing the ground beneath houses and streets to tremor, while in other areas, flood levels were rapidly rising and engulfing entire neighborhoods as storm systems refused to move on from the Mississippi Valley. As the drought continues to draw the water farther away each year, Lake Mead continues to show the stark white ring etched into the canyon walls, while ancient weapons surfaced from secret caverns deep beneath Arizona's Red Rock Desert, bringing thousands of years' worth of relics back into the light of history. Every one of these occurrences has an explanation. The smoke from wildfires, sunlight scattering, atmospheric instability creating violent storms, tectonic activity generating earthquakes, and drought exposing hidden landscapes. But many people find it hard to deny the pattern when these occurrences are seen collectively, when the earth, the sky, and the waters all appear to change at the same time. Unusual changes in the natural world have always prompted societies to stop and think, as many believe there is a close relationship between environmental instability and the deeper chapters of human history. There are ancient records that discuss these periods of great earthquakes, fearful events and signs from heaven. And for generations, people have been searching the natural world for hints that something more profound may be happening. For some observers, these occurrences are just the complicated planet's natural cycles, but others think they might act as a reminder of the true fragility of human institutions. Power grids, cities, and roadways can all seem permanent, but history has demonstrated that in a single night, nature may transform vast landscapes. Many people once again look to historical wisdom for direction and introspection during times like these, emphasizing that in uncertain times, attentiveness and alertness should take precedence over panic. These moments place more emphasis on humility, readiness, and internal reflection than they do on precise dates, because significant turning points frequently occur when people least expect them. The sky continues to astonish those who gaze skyward, while storms continue to surge and seas continue to change, leaving one last query. Are we paying heed to the indicators of our time, or are we continuing to ignore them if they are intended to awaken us? We appreciate your patience with us during this journey, and if these events have caused you to consider what is going on in the world, please share your thoughts below. Think about reflecting on these times and seeking wisdom for the days ahead, and remember to stay connected as we continue to research the mysteries and indications that are emerging across our world. All over the United States, it appears that something disturbing is happening as the Northeast is being battered by a massive snowstorm at the same time that unrelenting rainfall is causing unexpected flooding in the South. More than ever, wild animals are venturing deep into human settlements, and coastal regions like Fort Myers Beach are being hit by intense hurricanes that seem to defy seasonal logic. Heavy clouds are twisting strangely across the sky, accompanied by odd light flashes and mysterious noises that many claim to have never heard before, making it feel more like a series of warnings piling upon each other than a collection of individual incidents. The most terrifying aspect is when multiple signs come at once rather than just one tragedy. The sky, the water, and the land all seem to be communicating a singular message of instability. A lot of people are starting to wonder if these occurrences are just natural catastrophes, or if they are indications that something more serious is attempting to draw our attention to a structural shift in our world. You are not alone if these events make you uncomfortable, as the simultaneous nature of these disasters raises deep questions about our readiness for a changing era. The snow will only add to this burden as it keeps its weight past Fall River and Cape Cod in Massachusetts, moving into New Haven, Connecticut, where the infrastructure is already struggling to hold. It is a time to express your views and seek a sense of tranquility as we face these overwhelming forces. A strong nor'easter struck the east coast from Virginia to the New England coastline throughout the night, putting roughly 40 million people under blizzard warnings from Maryland to Maine. This is one of the worst snowstorms in decades, affecting states like New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, with New Jersey seeing its first statewide blizzard warning since 1996. With wind gusts reaching 50 to 70 mph and snowfall rates of 1 to 3 inches per hour, travel has become nearly impossible due to near-zero visibility. The repercussions have been dire, with over 9,000 flight cancellations and 7 states declaring emergencies as airports from Philadelphia to Boston remain mostly closed. Non-essential traffic has been prohibited from using New York City's roads, bridges, and highways, and the heavy snow has begun accumulating like glue on tree limbs and electricity lines, raising the possibility of widespread power outages. The average temperature in New York City has dropped to its lowest in more than 20 years, making this winter already harsh and resulting in numerous weather-related fatalities. People are reminded of how little and helpless they are in comparison to nature at times like these, as even skilled workers acknowledge they cannot securely climb poles or clear fallen trees in such blinding gusts. This is a physical manifestation of a world where human strength reaches its limit despite our contemporary technology, echoing historical accounts of the freezing blast and the mighty downpour that no one can resist. These events serve as a reminder that the strongest storms are permitted by a hand much larger than ours, forcing us to consider our reliance on forces beyond our control. Overwhelmed and forgotten, severe flooding has started to occur in a number of U.S. places even before winter has completely passed, as rain falls nonstop for days and fast snowmelt causes rivers to rise dangerously quickly in the Ohio River Valley. In a matter of hours, homes were swamped and neighborhoods were inundated, leaving families to escape rising water in the middle of the night. The limitations of our infrastructure have been reached, and hospitals in Pennsylvania and West Virginia have noted a rise in admissions due to hypothermia and weather-related injuries. Extreme cold, blizzards, and flooding, once thought to be distinct seasonal occurrences, now overlap and exacerbate one another, giving populations little time to recover. When water rises uncontrollably, people are powerless despite sophisticated warning systems, and well-known landmarks dissolve beneath muddy currents. The catastrophe itself is alarming, but even more concerning is the increasing coldness in the human reaction. As villages flood and roofs collapse, many no longer react with shock, but instead sigh and move on without questioning the root cause. This state of apathy is a danger in itself, as the most hazardous time is not just when a disaster occurs, but when people lose their sense of urgency or grief. It is appropriate during this time to seek a heart that is sensitive rather than numb, staying vigilant as the environment continues to shift. Simultaneously, there have been reports of another disturbing incident in certain locations where the natural night sky has almost completely disappeared. Darkness did not completely descend for almost 72 hours in a row in parts of the Great Lakes region, where a faint and enduring glow spread across the horizon in place of the typical transition from dusk to night. The distinction between day and night was blurred by an odd, icy light that was neither sunlight nor moonlight, causing people to lose their sense of time and experience persistent anxiousness. Hospitals saw a surge in stress-related patients, and wildlife behaved erratically as birds flew at odd hours, confused by the perpetual twilight. The emotional impression of a sky without stars is profound, reminding us that the regularity of our seasons and the lights in the sky were designed as signs for humanity. When even the cycle of day and night is disrupted, it raises a deeper question of whether we are witnessing a purely environmental phenomenon or a broader systemic warning. Meanwhile, in the residential pockets of Bluefield and surrounding mountain towns, law enforcement and wildlife agents are searching for predators that have begun to claim human spaces as their own. Making these animals leave your proximity is the best approach to ensuring safety. But a concerning trend has started to emerge across Colorado, Montana, California, Alaska, Florida, and Texas. The line separating civilization from the natural world is blurring as more and more wild creatures infiltrate human settlements. Black and grizzly bears have been seen wandering into neighborhoods in suburban Denver, toppling trash cans and even standing outside private residences. Local authorities have issued curfews and warnings as deer, wolves, and coyotes show up on roads throughout the Midwest and the South, causing fatal traffic accidents. In coastal states like Florida and California, unusual shark sightings near the shore have prompted abrupt beach closures, suggesting that the instability of the land and sky is being mirrored in the behavior of the animal kingdom. This unprecedented migration of wildlife into the heart of our cities suggests that the natural world is no longer confined by the boundaries we have built, signaling a shift in the environment that demands our immediate attention. Every one of these events, From the frozen streets of Boston to the predator-patrolled suburbs of Texas, points to a world that is no longer behaving according to our expectations. We must stay alert to these indicators and recognize that the fragility of our systems is being tested by forces that are growing louder and more frequent by the day. Experienced fishermen across the Florida Keys and the Gulf Coast have acknowledged that they have never witnessed such aggressive marine activity so close to land, while bird flocks have begun to swoop down on pedestrians and vehicles in a number of coastal locations, causing a palpable sense of panic and bewilderment. Experts suggest that this erratic behavior may be impacted by irregular atmospheric conditions, food shortages, and habitat disruption. But when these occurrences happen concurrently and with increasing frequency across the nation, the issue goes beyond simple environmental answers. These advancements serve as a stark reminder of how little actual control humans have over the fundamental forces of creation. As we find ourselves unable to manage nature when its ancient patterns start to shift, despite our advanced urban planning and wildlife management systems. Animals that traditionally shied away from human contact now move brazenly through the streets during the day, leaving communities in states like California and Colorado to respond to crises rather than prevent them, making people feel as if the natural order itself has become fundamentally unstable. History and ancient wisdom suggest that the land itself begins to mourn, and the animals of the field are taken away when the internal moral order of a society breaks down, portraying nature not as mindless chaos, but as something intricately linked to the spiritual and ethical state of humanity. This groaning of the earth is often seen as a signal of a world in transition, moving through the pains of a significant rebirth that challenges our sense of security. No one will be able to enjoy the barrier islands of Fort Myers Beach for a very long time, as a neighborhood once famed for its sunshine and serene coastal waters has just been devastated by a catastrophic hurricane. Residents opened their eyes to a landscape of total destruction where whole communities were effectively eliminated in what seemed like a single breath. Families, businesses, and decades of memories vanished beneath a storm surge that crashed ashore with unprecedented force. The streets were not just flooded. The island was totally overran as foundations were lifted from the sand. Boats were thrown onto the roofs of neighboring buildings, and well-known roadways turned into rivers of debris. Even those who meticulously planned and boarded their homes stared in disbelief at how everything could vanish so swiftly, realizing that no amount of preparedness can completely withstand the weight of the wind and surging water when nature rushes out of control. In moments like these, where the hard earth gives way and the water swells to the neck, humanity is reminded that solid ground is a privilege and that everything steady can abruptly become brittle. This is not gentle water, but creation in upheaval, forcing a nation to confront forces far greater than its own engineering and forecasting. Simultaneously, a number of people in states ranging from Arizona to Pennsylvania have reported seeing unsettling occurrences in the night sky, where abrupt bursts of brilliant white light break through thick, twisting cloud formations that roll in deep red and dark gray. Witnesses claim it does not look like a typical storm. The sky appears agitated and almost living, followed by a deep, vibrating hum that reverberates through buildings and shakes the very bodies of those standing in open spaces. Many describe a metallic, trumpet-like sound, a hollow, powerful resonance that rattles windows and causes widespread worry across social media. While some propose theories of solar flares or geological movements, often referred to as sky quakes, no single explanation has been able to alleviate the underlying uneasiness felt by those who heard it. The terror stems from the feeling that something uncontrollable is happening above us, as the sky, which we believe to be steady and dependable, abruptly exhibits behaviors that no technology can quiet or command. Throughout history, these sounds in the heavens have been connected to significant turning points and signals intended to awaken a spiritually asleep planet. The true threat, however, is not the sound itself or the tragedy of the storm, but the growing apathy in the hearts of those who witness it. When strange indications show up on land and sea and people simply shrug and move on, it reflects a dangerous spiritual indifference where the heart becomes numb to things that should cause distress. We are cautioned against a state of living where we see the deterioration of our environment and the shifting of the stars but feel nothing, carrying on with daily life as if nothing requires our care. Refusal to see the pattern, rather than ignorance of the facts, is the real risk as the heavens continue to declare a message of shifting glory. As we watch the natural order be upset from the flooded streets of Florida to the vibrating skies of the Midwest, we are forced to ask, where is our heart when our mind is searching for an explanation? The labor of his hands is proclaimed by the skies above the rolling hills of the Appalachians and the vast plains of the Midwest, as creation was always intended to speak in addition to merely functioning. The grandeur of the night sky was intended to serve as a perpetual reminder to humanity that it is not the center of the universe. Yet the loss is both visual and spiritual if that feeling of wonder wanes, whether due to pride, distraction, or the continuous artificial lighting of our sprawling urban centers. There were always signs, however. People across the nation have learned to look without truly seeing, ignoring the deep structural harmony between humans and the natural world. When this harmony changes, when wildlife in states like Montana and Colorado relocates into the heart of suburban neighborhoods, or when the land itself across the American breadbasket becomes visibly stressed, it is not viewed as random disorder in the eyes of history. Instead, it is understood that the land mourns and all who dwell in it waste away, a physical manifestation of an imbalance that occurs when moral carelessness and arrogance override the order established by nature. There is no lyrical exaggeration in this imagery. It reveals a spiritual principle where the environment acts as a mirror, suffering not out of rage, but as a result of a deep systemic instability. Humanity was never supposed to reign without being answerable to its creator. Yet there is kindness even in the warnings we see unfolding from the storm-battered coast of Florida to the trembling ground of the West. These signs are intended to cause people to halt rather than to panic, provoking contemplation rather than paralyzing us with fear. Grace is still being extended if these strange occurrences prompt even a brief reevaluation of our priorities, values, and faith in an increasingly uncertain world. The appearance of signals would not be the ultimate tragedy. The tragedy would be that after these events are observed, clarified, and discussed across every news cycle in the country, they are rejected without any internal transformation. Spiritual blindness poses a greater threat than physical obscurity, and humanity runs the risk of missing the very mercy intended to steer it back when it becomes accustomed to a restless world and begins to consider every extreme warning to be the new normal. Restoration is always the goal, even when mankind becomes callous to calamities and accepts environmental upheaval as just another headline. One of the most obvious indicators of impending darkness is the silence of the human conscience, a state where individuals cease to feel grief over the deterioration of their society and their surroundings. However, the message is not intended to make people fearful, but rather to bring individuals back to a sense of humility and moral clarity that may have been hidden beneath the comforts and distractions of modern American life. There is always a route back for those who are willing to humble themselves, seek truth, and turn away from the path of moral decay, a promise that offers hope even as civilizations stray far from spiritual truth. The greater question then becomes whether humanity will change before it is too late, rather than wondering which catastrophe will strike the next coastline or city. Throughout history, mild warnings in the form of droughts, erratic weather patterns, and social unrest were used to communicate a need for change. and those warnings only became more potent when they were ignored. This does not imply a harsh reality, but rather a pattern of mercy that precedes a final reckoning, showing that the goal is always for people to return to a state of balance rather than face judgment. Today, many of these same patterns exist across the United States, yet people are no longer as shocked by extreme weather, economic volatility, or global uncertainty as they once were. Instead, as people go about their regular lives in cities like Chicago, Houston, and New York, warnings flash across their screens like background noise, becoming a part of the ambient static of daily existence. After the next news cycle starts, the disasters, power outages, and strange changes in the sky are frequently and swiftly forgotten. The biggest risk is not that these catastrophes occur, but that we cease allowing them to awaken our consciousness. As lawlessness and coldness increase, hearts grow emotionally distracted and too at ease to hear the warnings of the natural world, preoccupied with the day-to-day struggle while losing their spiritual sensitivity. This is why the focus must be on today. For when a warning is disregarded, the heart becomes more adept at ignoring the next one until sensitivity is replaced by a profound silence. The indications surrounding us, the unprecedented nor'easters in the northeast, the rising floods in the south, and the predatory wildlife in our suburbs, are intended to encourage honesty regarding our own values and our readiness for the future. Physical devastation is rarely the first step in the biggest societal catastrophes. Instead, they start with apathy, occurring when people perceive the warnings yet decide not to react. Despite this caution, there is still hope because the ultimate purpose of these disruptions is repair rather than total devastation. The decision that humanity must make is the same as it has always been. Pay attention and seek wisdom while there is still time. Something very unpleasant appears to be happening simultaneously across the United States as the Northeast is battered by a severe winter storm. Unrelenting rains cause unexpected floods in the heartland, and the number of wild animals infiltrating our communities continues to rise. Strange cloud formations and mysterious lights in the sky have caused many to feel apprehensive, as hurricanes continue to hit coastal places like Fort Myers Beach, making the warnings seem closer together and louder as one catastrophe after another continues to unfold across the American landscape. Extremes are no longer coming one at a time across the United States, as rain, wind, and a massive storm surge recently overtook New York City, a metropolis founded on the confidence of its structural engineering, where a stalled monster storm turned famous avenues into rushing rivers. Soon after, unexpected atmospheric rivers on the West Coast caused entire neighborhoods in the canyons of Southern California to vanish, trapping families while rescuers battled the rising water in a race against time. Throughout the South, a terrible ice storm paralyzed entire cities overnight from Atlanta to Nashville, toppling electrical grids and freezing regions that were fundamentally unprepared for a winter of this magnitude. Additionally, as a deep and inexplicable hum vibrated through homes along the East Coast from Delaware to Massachusetts, the sky itself turned a brilliant, oppressive orange, frightening both people and animals with a glow that felt artificial and living at the same time. There is a hauntingly similar feeling that something is changing, but it is manifesting in different locations with different signs, leading many to ask not what is happening, but why so many natural boundaries are being crossed simultaneously. Before we go on, please remain tuned, subscribe, and like this video as we dive deeper into these events. A strong storm system stalled over the northeastern United States in late winter, trapping itself over New York State and releasing a mix of ferocious winds and unrelenting rain that swiftly overwhelmed public confidence. Rainfall totals increased to levels never seen outside of historic flood occurrences from the Hudson Valley to Long Island, with numerous locations recording more than 4 inches of rain in less than a single day. Water backed up into homes and subterranean transit corridors due to the quick failure of drainage systems built for a different era, and reservoirs north of the city filled up alarmingly quickly, prompting authorities to discharge water into already swollen rivers, increasing the danger downstream. Sustained gusts of 50 to 60 mph drove storm surge inland throughout the Atlantic coast, pushing waves over seawalls and flooding coastal roads from Montauk to the Rockaways. As authorities informed locals that this was not a normal storm, but rather a compounded disaster developing hour by hour, emergency alerts lit up phones across the tri-state area. The threat changed over time as heavy snow quickly accumulated at higher elevations in the Adirondacks, while constant rains saturated the soil in lower elevations, causing hillsides to become dangerously unstable. Landslides and infrastructure failure were made more likely by this vertical disparity, while a blocking high to the north kept a stalled low-pressure system in place, resulting in an Atlantic moisture conveyor belt that fed the storm constantly. Rivers were forced to rise more quickly with each cycle as new rain bands continuously formed over the same regions, and storm water rushed back down drains, turning city streets into small, violent rivers. Scientists attribute the storm's persistence to blocked pressure systems and air blockage, but even specialists acknowledge that while these hypotheses explain the physics, they fall short of explaining the anomalous behavior and the perfect timing of this simultaneous escalation of rain, wind, and surge. The pattern is clear to those who study historical records of systemic collapse, which often describe moments when the windows of the heavens seem to open and the deep itself pours forth, depicting a convergence of pressure from above and below rather than a single isolated force. These records portray storms that are faster and more unpredictable as warnings to realize our boundaries before a final, ultimate shaking occurs. Residents in many parts of the East Coast, including Virginia, the Mid-Atlantic, and New England, started to see something quite strange in the sky as the horizon was illuminated by a broad orange glow that extended well beyond the bounds of a typical sunset. Haze, wildfire smoke, or auroral activity could not account for the light's uniformity and breadth, and there was no obvious air disturbance to explain what people were seeing. The sky was noted by witnesses as thick, muted, and unusually motionless, and without wind or rain, the orange band persisted, throbbing slightly before gradually dissipating. Many were uneasy not because of how dramatic the light seemed, but because of how controlled it felt, as if the sky itself was retaining tension instead of releasing it. Shortly after the glow faded, a deep, persistent hum started to be reported in several states, a low sound that unnerved livestock and pets while vibrating structures without being acute or explosive. Animals got agitated as dogs barked for no apparent reason and birds suddenly flew from trees. And although people went outside expecting planes or storms, the sky remained serene. Earthquakes and industrial activity were ruled out by officials, and no earth movement was detected by seismic detectors. Yet the sound's authenticity was verified by acoustic sensors across great distances. This was not a localized occurrence. Within the same time frame, reports of the atmospheric hum and the darkening sky were made over hundreds of miles, causing concern to move outward as focus shifted upward. People did not panic, but they did not ignore it either, as the air itself seemed to react in ways it should not. Ancient wisdom speaks of signals in the sun, moon, and stars that cause confusion among nations, and observers note that heavenly signs are never isolated occurrences. They frequently coincide with earthly turbulence, indicating a purposeful change rather than a chance disruption. In many traditions, when the sky changes suddenly and sound travels without a source, it is described as a form of communication, a signal that deep attention is required. What is being announced if the land below is still unstable, but the skies themselves start to react? Post your opinions in the comments section below. As the Clackamas River rises dangerously quickly in western Oregon, a strong atmospheric river is pouring unrelenting rain over the region, erasing the borders between streets, yards, and river channels. Water flows into residential areas in a matter of hours, turning communities into muddy, swiftly moving shallow lakes. Debris, logs, fencing, cars, and pieces of buildings is transported through silent streets, emerging in backyards as though the river itself had unexpectedly invaded private spaces. Residents talk about seeing water take over places that were never supposed to be touched, waking up to unbelievable scenes where well-known landmarks vanish beneath the surface. Not only is the water's height unsettling to emergency personnel in the Pacific Northwest, but so is its behavior. Under the surface, currents create intense pressure and reverse natural patterns, flowing in numerous directions at once. Soil is ripped away, undermining bridges, and roads deteriorate and collapse under constant pressure, proving that even our most solid structures are vulnerable when the foundations of the world begin to stir. As we stand at this threshold where the sky, the earth, and the waters of America are speaking in a language we can no longer afford to ignore, we must realize that our true strength does not lie in the concrete of our cities or the technology in our hands, but in the humility of our hearts and our willingness to seek a higher wisdom during these times of immense transition. The events we have witnessed, from the frozen streets of New York to the scorched red deserts of Arizona, are not merely headlines or atmospheric anomalies. They are a profound call to stillness in a world that has become too loud and too distracted to notice the signals of its own fragility. We often live as though the ground beneath us is permanent and the seasons are guaranteed. Yet as the horizons glow with an unfamiliar light and the deep waters of our great reservoirs heave with unspoken pressure, we are reminded that we are part of a much larger and more complex design that requires our respect and our vigilance. It is in these moments of uncertainty, when the storms refuse to move and the ancient relics of the past stir in the dark, that we must find the courage to stop running and start reflecting on the direction of our lives and the state of our nation. Let us join together in a moment of sincere reflection and a prayer for the peace and protection of every household facing the weight of these shifting times, asking for the strength to stand firm even as the foundations around us seem to tremble. Divine Source of all life and Architect of the heavens, we come before you today with hearts that are heavy with the weight of the world and minds that are seeking clarity amidst the shadows of the unknown, asking for your hand of protection to be over the families across this great land. We pray for the people in the Northeast who are battling the blinding snow and the biting cold, that they may find warmth and safety within their homes, and for the workers who risk their lives in the freezing gusts to restore power and clear the paths for others. We lift up the communities in the South and the West where the waters have risen beyond their banks, swallowing streets and homes in a single breath. May the families who have lost so much find the resilience to rebuild and the comfort of neighbors who stand by them in their hour of need. We ask for wisdom for the leaders and the responders who must make life-altering decisions in the heat of the storm, that their minds be sharp and their hearts be moved by compassion for those they serve. As the skies over our cities turn to shades of fire and the air vibrates with sounds that challenge our understanding, we pray that these signs would not lead us into a spirit of fear or panic, but into a spirit of profound awareness and spiritual awakening. Forgive us for the times we have walked in pride, believing that our systems were invincible and that we could reign over the earth without accountability to the laws of balance and truth. We ask that you soften the hearts that have grown cold and open the eyes that have learned to look without seeing, so that we may recognize the signals of our time and respond with humility rather than apathy. Let the light that flashes across our horizons serve as a reminder of your presence and a call to return to the paths of righteousness and peace. For we know that without your guidance, even the strongest nation is but a house built upon the sand. May our homes be sanctuaries of tranquility in the midst of the chaos, and may our words be a source of encouragement to those who are struggling to find hope as the world transforms around them. We pray for the protection of our children, that they may grow up in a world where the natural order is restored, and where they are taught to respect the delicate harmony between humanity and the creation we inhabit. As we face the coming days, give us a sense of urgency that is tempered by peace, knowing that we are never truly alone even when the earth shakes and the waters roar. We seek the wisdom to prepare our households not just physically with supplies and shelter, but spiritually with the armor of faith and the clarity of a conscience that is tuned to your voice. Let this time of global disruption be the catalyst for a great turning, where we set aside our divisions and are agreed to seek the well-being of all who share this planet, acknowledging that we are all travelers under the same vast and mysterious sky. We thank you for the mercy that precedes judgment, and for the warnings that are given in kindness to wake us from our slumber before it is too late. May the healing of our land begin within the quiet spaces of our own hearts, and may that peace radiate outward until every city and every town feels the warmth of a renewed spirit. We stand in awe of the majesty of the universe and the power of the elements, and we submit ourselves to the wisdom that governs the stars and the tides, trusting that there is a purpose in every storm and a message in every tremor. Keep us vigilant, keep us humble, and above all, keep us united in the pursuit of truth as we navigate the mysteries that are emerging in our world today. Now that we have explored these incredible and unsettling signals together, I want to hear from you because your perspective and your experiences are a vital part of this ongoing investigation into the changes surrounding us. Have you personally witnessed any of these strange lights or felt the ground move in a way that wasn't reported in the mainstream media? Do you believe that these simultaneous disasters are a random fluke of nature? Or are you sensing, like many others, that we are witnessing a coordinated warning that demands a deeper response from our society? Please share your thoughts and your own stories in the comments section below, as every piece of information helps us build a clearer picture of the transformation we are all living through. If you found value in this analysis and want to stay updated as we continue to track these environmental and prophetic shifts across the United States, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a report. Your support helps us keep this channel going and allows us to reach more people with the message of vigilance and preparedness that is so desperately needed right now. Don't forget to give this video a like if it made you stop and think about the state of our world, and consider sharing it with your friends and family to start a conversation about what these signs truly mean for our future. We are living in a historic moment, and it is up to us to pay attention and seek the truth together before the next horizon brings another shift we aren't ready for. Thank you for being a part of this community, for your prayers, and for your commitment to staying awake in a world that is trying to fall asleep. We will continue to monitor the skies, the land, and the deep, and we will bring you the latest developments as they happen, so stay tuned for our next deep dive into the mysteries of our time. Remember to stay safe, stay vigilant, and always keep looking up, for the signs are all around us if we only have the heart to see them. Until next time, may you find peace in the presence of wisdom and the strength to face whatever the future holds with a clear mind and an open heart. Your support helps us keep this channel going and allows us to reach more people with the message of vigilance and preparedness that is so desperately needed right now. Don't forget to give this video a like if it made you stop and think about the state of our world, and consider sharing it with your friends and family to start a conversation about what these signs truly mean for our future. We are living in a historic moment, and it is up to us to pay attention and seek the truth together before the next horizon brings another shift we aren't ready for. Thank you for being a part of this community, for your prayers, and for your commitment